You ever wake up on a Saturday morning just wanting to figure out which box your coffee mugs are in, and instead you get smacked in the face by a shrill HOA inspection at your own front door? Yeah, that was us, fresh in Oakview Lakes, only 2 weeks in, still arguing over where the couch should go, and already trouble had found us. And not just any trouble. Karen, the queen bee of the HOA clipboard, clamped in one hand, her phone already pointed like a weapon in the other, ready to record whatever villainy she thought she'd uncovered. She didn't even knock, just barged up, declared our mailbox out of regulation, and with a theatrical flip of her clipboard said our fence was half an inch too tall. "That's a serious violation," she barked like she was cracking open a big crime. My name's Daniel, by the way. And in my family, law isn't just something we do, it's the language we speak at the dinner table, the air we breathe. Dad's a defense attorney, Mom's into real estate law, my sister's climbing the corporate ladder, and even my kid brother is learning the ropes. But right then, all those legal bloodlines just meant we'd caught the eye of the one neighbor who could not stand being questioned. Dad, always the diplomat, asked if she could show us exactly where in the rule book it said all that. Karen's eyes narrowed. "It's in the HOA handbook," she snapped like she was about to cast a spell. "And if you don't fix it by Monday, there will be consequences." Now, we're not the type to pick fights with folks on day one, but it was clear Karen didn't want conversation. She wanted to plant her flag and show everyone who ran this cul-de-sac. Then, in a move straight out of some petty suburban soap opera, Karen threatened to call the cops. And did. So there we were, still smelling like fresh paint and moving tape, watching two squad cars roll up on our driveway. Neighbors peeked from their blinds, phones out, already buzzing the group chat. Karen just stood there, arms folded, smirking like she'd already won. The cops were polite, but clearly wondering why they'd been called over a mailbox. Dad explained, and of course Karen couldn't resist chiming in every 2 seconds, her voice climbing higher, accusing us of being hostile, refusing to comply, the whole 9 yards. Here's where things flipped. Mom, who'd read the entire HOA handbook our first night just for fun, quietly pulled out her copy and handed it to the officer's finger on the exact page Karen had conveniently skipped. "Maybe you'd like to see the actual rule," she said, calm as a lake. The look on Karen's face, I swear, was something I wish I'd gotten on video. The officers nodded and gently asked if maybe there'd been a misunderstanding. Karen sputtered, her face turning a pretty spectacular shade of red before storming off with a, "This isn't over." The neighborhood, meanwhile, got a little quieter, but we knew we'd just stepped onto her radar. Monday morning, we found a fat official envelope stamped Oakview Lakes HOA on our porch. Inside, a violation notice, fines $500 for the mailbox, $750 for the fence, and a real pretty threat of legal action if we didn't correct everything immediately. My sister Lily read the letter out loud at breakfast, laughing so hard she nearly spit out her coffee. But Dad just looked at it, frowning. "This isn't about mailboxes," he said. "She's trying to make an example out of us." Mom just nodded. Time to remind her that intimidation doesn't work, at least not here. By lunchtime, we'd formally requested a meeting with the HOA board. Karen predictably threw a fit, but Mom had all the bylaws on her side. Residents have a right to dispute violations, clear as day. That night, our living room looked like a legal war room. Mom with her highlighters, Lily drafting a statement, even Sam, my little brother, practicing how to explain why the mailbox was actually just fine. The board meeting was held at the little community center, ceiling fans creaking above us. Karen sat at the head of the table, lips pressed tight, ready for battle. Dad stood up, voice steady, saying we weren't here to make trouble, just to be treated fairly. Karen tried to interrupt, but Mr. Harris, the board's president, a gentle, tired-looking guy, held up a hand. "Let him finish, Karen." Mom went next, pulling out the handbook, citing page numbers, showing photos proving the fence and mailbox were grandfathered in. Lily handed copies to every board member, and Sam had pictures of 3 other homes with identical mailboxes. Karen looked rattled for the first time. Dad finished, "We're not asking for special treatment, just fair treatment." The room fell quiet. Mr. Harris nodded, saying they'd review the documents and respond in writing. Karen's face went purple. "They're twisting the rules. They're making me look—" Mr. Harris just cut her off. "That's enough for tonight." As we packed up, Karen leaned in, whispering, "You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "You know what?" She had it backward. A few tense days passed. Karen's porch lights burned late. Her lawn looked military-grade trimmed, and we figured maybe she'd back off. No such luck. Friday night, just as we sat down to dinner, red and blue lights flashed again. Same cops, same story. This time, Karen trailed after them, phone raised, streaming live to whoever cared. "Here they are," she said. "The hostile family refusing lawful HOA orders." Dad, totally unbothered, answered the door. The officers said they'd received another complaint about threats and non-compliance. Mom calmly asked if Karen had told them the board hadn't even ruled yet. Karen shrieked, literally shrieked, that we'd threatened her at the meeting. But thing is, lawyers don't threaten. They build cases. Dad invited the officers inside. Lily brought out the letter from the board, which clearly said fines were on hold. The officers got it right away, one shaking his head, realizing Karen had wasted their time again. Karen, still filming, started yelling that we were dangerous, demanding they arrest us. That was the tipping point. The younger officer just gently put her phone hand down. "Ma'am, you can't keep calling us for civil matters. You're bordering on misuse of emergency services." Karen's face, honest to God, just crumbled. Mom looked her dead in the eye and said, "Officers, if this happens again, we'll be filing a harassment complaint." Karen stammered, "You wouldn't dare." Dad just smiled. "Oh, we would, and we'll win." The officers left Karen, stomped home, and we sat back down to cold spaghetti, realizing our neighbor was on a one-woman crusade to make our lives miserable. But here's the thing. When your family speaks legalese at the breakfast table, threats don't hit the same. And now the board was paying attention too. Karen went quiet for a week. No more angry notes, no surprise visits. We hoped maybe she'd found a new hobby, but then came the community cookout. Dad said we had to go, couldn't let her control the narrative. So we showed up, Karen already holding court by the grill, her voice just dripping with sugary fake, "Oh, hi, neighbors." She started telling anyone who'd listen that we'd threatened to sue, that we wanted to tear down the neighborhood standards, that she was the only thing standing between us, and property value apocalypse. Problem is, Karen can't help but overplay her hand. The more she talked, the more her voice sharpened, and Lily, bless her, caught the whole rant on video quietly from her pocket. Then Karen, practically shouting, said, "They think they're above the rules because they're lawyers, but we can vote them out, can't we?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. That's when Mrs. Chen, who'd barely spoken before, piped up. "Maybe let's not do this here, Karen." And Mr. Harris stepped in. "You're embarrassing yourself. And the board." For a split second you could see it, Karen realizing she was losing the room. The fallout from the cookout was instant. Every neighbor, every group chat, every porch, everyone was talking. But Karen wasn't done. She filed an emergency motion, tried to slap new fines on us, twice as big, twice as desperate. The board called another meeting. This time the air was heavy, but neighbors who barely nodded at us before were suddenly friendly. Karen launched into a speech, half meltdown, half stand-up set about us intimidating her. When she finished, Dad stood calm as ever. "We just want the rules followed, that's all. The written ones." Mom followed emails, fines issued before votes, video of Karen screaming at us. Lily played the cookout clip, Karen's voice echoing around the room. Finally, Mr. Harris said, "We've reviewed everything. The fines are invalid. The family doesn't owe a thing." Karen lost it. "You're all afraid of them." Mr. Harris shook his head. "No, Karen. We're just tired of you." Then the bombshell, a vote of no confidence. One by one, hands went up. Karen's reign ended right there, slammed door and all. The room felt lighter, like we'd all exhaled for the first time in weeks. On the way home, Sam asked, "Think she'll try again?" Mom shrugged. "Maybe. But now everyone knows the truth." Dad just smiled. The law isn't about scaring people. It's about what's fair. Karen thought she could bully us with threats and drama, but in the end, the facts won. And yeah, having a family of lawyers doesn't hurt either. So if you've ever crossed paths with a Karen, or you just think it's time more people stood up for what's right, hit that like button, drop your war stories in the comments, and tell me, was justice served? Or did the HOA world just get a little more interesting?